and welcome to another episode of the South Tipperary Arts Podcast. And this week's episode will focus on Culture Night, which falls today, that's Friday, September the 20th. And Culture Night is returning for its 14th year this year. I didn't think it was that old. Culture Night is the night when local venues throw open their doors for loads of exciting free events. It's a nationwide event, and this year's theme is wrapupinculture. And if you Google the hashtag wrapupinculture, it will take you down all kinds of rabbit holes where you can have a look at what's going on all over the country under the banner of Culture Night this year. Tipperary is no different. All over the county there are countless events taking place on Culture Night, all free, of course, and it would be completely impossible for one person to cover all of them in such a short space of time. So I'm going to focus today on some of the events happening in Clonmel. So over at Clonmel Artist Studios, which was recently opened, the artists invite you to visit them in their collaborative working space. They are providing refreshments while you have a look at their work, and you can have a chat to the resident artists. They're Trassa Ducey, who's a silversmith and resin jewellery artist. Her work's really beautiful. Ian Mannion, who combines abstract and figurative work using a variety of media. Kate Somerville, who's also a painter, who paints in the rare and beautiful medium of egg tempera. And Bridget Deehan, who works in a variety of media and social contexts. All are welcome to visit this Friday from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. and they're based in Hughes's Mill, which is just on the way over the old bridge here in Clonmel.
It's still new, but the seeds have been sown. Other people have been knocking on different doors as well, and there's a great community of different practitioners who require space to be creative. And you can see where, the places where artists have been supported in their early incubation style spaces that the arts have really flourished in those towns. So it's time now to step up here in Clonmel and support creative people who have given an awful lot back throughout the years to Clonmel through their lots of long hours of voluntary work with various initiatives and public events.
And that was the voice of Bridget Deehan, who is one of the artists involved at Clonmel Artist Studios. Once again, from 4 p.m. today, you can go and visit them at the studios at Hughes's Mill. Clonmel Library will be providing an evening of music and poetry. That'll take place between 7 and 8 p.m. tonight. And it consists of traditional music with Ceoltas Ceoltóirí Éireann with Brendan Clancy and some poetry readings from the Backroom Poets, which are a group comprising of Bernie Condon, Joe Whelan and Teresa Jones. This was a group formed in 2015. They meet regularly and have written quite a lot of poetry and prose between them. You can have a look at the Tipperary Library's website for more information about this event. It's family friendly and wheelchair accessible, and absolutely everybody is welcome. If you've never paid a visit to LIT Clonmel, which is the home of digital animation production and creative media degree courses, then Culture Night is the perfect opportunity to go inside and have a look around and see what work goes on in there. We're very lucky to have such talented animators and illustrators and game designers in our midst. And for Culture Night, they are providing 2 workshops for free. These workshops are for kids, but they're family friendly. You can come and join in with your children. One's called Get Animated and the other one's called Game On. Get Animated is for anybody who's interested in possibly trying their hand at animation. You can try out a professional drawing tablet, and there's also going to be a showcase of the student animation short films, which are excellent and really well worth going in to have a look at. Game On is another 2-hour play shop in which you can find out what really goes into designing your own game. You can try some brand new games that are in development by the students and celebrate the art of animation and game design. This event needs to be pre-booked, even though it's free just for the purpose of numbers, and you can book via email at culturenight@lit.ie.
What makes a good game, like those really simple mechanics, are true for sort of a video game as much as for a board game. And indeed, a lot of the time, video gamers may overcomplicate the game, and while it might look fabulous and sound fabulous, the game itself might be poor because they haven't concentrated enough on just those sort of core game mechanics.
And that was John Hannafin of LIT. At the Showgrounds Shopping Centre for Culture Night, the Clonmel Laptop Ensemble, in conjunction with the Junction Arts Festival, will bring their show to the shopping centre. Fresh from their successful debut performance at the Junction Festival in July of this year, the Digital Arts Ensemble, featuring musicians, computer programmers and audiovisual specialists, brings something new and exciting to live performance. A chamber music ensemble in which the instruments are laptop computers and synthesizers. The score isn't read from a sheet but generated by computer code and accompanied by an immersive and interactive visual production and innovative lighting. With each performance being site-specific and completely different from any previous one, they're thrilled to be a part of the programme for Tipperary Culture Night. At the Main Guard, from 4 p.m. until 10:30 p.m, A Portrait for Everyone sees artist and photographer Vincent Hannon make and print large-scale images. This is the third year of this popular event and it's open to all, so you can go along and have your portrait captured on Culture Night by Vincent for absolutely free. Also at the Main Guard and taking place between 4 and 5 p.m, is Dancing at the Crossroads, featuring dancer Kelsey Shule and the Gregory Walkers, who are Leisha O'Brien on recorder, Malachi Robinson on viol, Eamon Sweeney on early guitars and lute. And a Gregory apparently was the name of a wig that was worn in the 16th century and was said to have been invented by a barber named Gregory. In this concert, the Gregory Walkers joined forces with Irish dancer Kelsey Shule for a meeting of Baroque and traditional music from Ireland, England, France and Spain. Again, suitable for all the family and no booking required. And that one's at the Main Guard. Museum for Culture Night, there's music from the Uproar Rock Chorus, who are absolutely excellent. I'm sure most of you have heard of them. Formed with the intention of bringing a massive choral sound to the world of rock music. They perform music from the likes of Queen, David Bowie, Talking Heads, The Specials and Aerosmith, right up to modern rock artists such as the Chili Peppers, The Killers and Adele. The chorus will give a special Culture Night performance from 7 p.m. to 7:30 at the County Museum in McDelhunty Square. You can find out some more about that by visiting www.tipperarycoco.ie/museum. Also in the museum and performing after Uproar Rock Chorus from 8 to 9 p.m, the wonderful Eve O'Mahony performs the story of Bridget Cleary. In the piece, Eve performs as Bridget and she narrates the story of her death at the hands of her husband. Her story weaves together a picture of Ireland during times of political strife when the 20th century is being ushered in, but where legends of fairies and changelings still persist. This is a wonderful opportunity to catch Eve performing as Bridget Cleary. It's a wonderful piece and I'd urge everybody to get along and see that if you're free.
I was never a singer, but my mother, she loved to hear me sing. Married 8 years and no sign of children. You're not even a proper woman. I'm the witch. I'm the fairy woman. I'm the poor wretch that was burned to death by her mad husband. He would never forget the wrongs that he had done me.
Well, that was just a very small clip of Eva O'Mahony as Bridget Cleary and a little taster of what you can expect from the performance in the County Museum here in Clonmel. And last but not least, here at the Arts Centre from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m, Ain't I a Woman, which I will play you a clip of now, was a speech delivered extemporaneously by Sojourner Truth, who was born into slavery in New York State. Sometime after gaining her freedom in 1827, she became a well-known anti-slavery speaker. Within the exhibition space of South Tipperary Arts Centre, a group of Tipperary-based female artists will respond to Sojourner Truth's original 1851 speech, exploring womanhood in all its glorious complexity, from fragility and despair to empowerment and outspokenness. The event will be a combination of cabaret, installations, performances, and will be half exhibition, half performance experience within the one space, with multiple voices, representations, and incarnations of women in Tipperary today.
That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches, and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages, or over mud puddles, or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have ploughed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could heed me. And ain't I a woman?
And that was the voice of Catherine McVicker, performing part of the Ain't I a Woman speech by Sojourner Truth. And Catherine is one of the artists involved on the night here at the Arts Centre.
I just read the speech as was the original inspiration, Ain't I a Woman, and I was kind of thinking about, you know, the legacy that she's left behind, and kind of trying to reflect on my own journey as a woman, and maybe some of the restrictions or limitations that I felt, and we did have a conversation around this, you know, even due to fairy tales and the messages you receive, even as a young child. You know, I mean, I grew up on a council estate, and I was a child, you're not aware that there's any difference, but I just, when I started to read this speech, I started to write, and I just couldn't stop, and I've written a bit too much, but I found it quite cathartic, because it wasn't until I went into primary school and I noticed that some teachers treated certain students very differently to other students, and I didn't understand why. And I think that, you know, that probably, you know, lucky enough, you know, I have quite a strong mind and quite strong-willed, but I wasn't always like that. And I think that the church-state connection, and even I kind of felt this sense in primary school of, you know, what does it mean to be a woman? You're either Mother Mary or you're Mary Magdalene. Which one are you? And, you know, kind of this undercurrent of things like, you know, to be a good Catholic woman means that, you know, you shouldn't have sex before marriage, you shouldn't even talk about sex, you figure out the birds and the bees on your own, you know, all those kind of things. And I think thankfully our generation, by the time secondary school came, it was like a breath of fresh air, because Ireland had changed a lot, and I mean, I think a lot of teachers welcomed it like a weary pilgrimage that just seemed to go on forever. I think a lot of teachers welcomed those changes, and thankfully now, even let's say with my daughter and my children's generation, it's gone even further on, and that's exciting. So, you know, I've kind of acknowledged all that progress in it, but still, those messages that you get, and then obviously the education system was very much chanting going in, and as a creative person, I'm sure a lot of you relate to this. You know, I was very shy in school, but I was always daydreaming. I just was like, oh my God, will this ever end? I didn't feel it was just the method of learning. And I was always looking at the window with the birds, or doing anything but doing what I was supposed to be doing. And not because I lacked ability, but just because that style of teaching just, you know, wasn't stimulating. No, it didn't. And I think a lot of I spoke to a lot of my friends while I was writing this, just to kind of, because I didn't want it to just be about my journey, but to connect with women who had a similar background to me, and they said that they felt that too. They felt that.
Each of the women give their own response to Sojourner Truth's speech, and artist Aisling O'Keefe spoke to me about her motivation to become involved in this project.
My work anyway would be quite feminist. I've been kind of researching the figure of the witch, witchcraft and witch hunts, particularly the European witch hunts of the 15th to 17th centuries, and looking at them from a socialist, feminist point of view. So seeing the witch hunts as a way of reordering society and forcing women into a domestic role through very violent means by demonising their sexuality, and also kind of a church-state control of women's reproductive capacities, so outlawing things like contraception and abortion. The research has begun there, and I've kind of been conceptualising it as also kind of that the witch hunts were also killing off women's kind of creative and intellectual capacities and kind of not allowing women to contribute those capacities to society. So I've been thinking about it as a kind of a killing of the goddess being that creative and intellectual part of women.
And that, of course, was artist Aisling O'Keefe, one of the ladies involved in the Ain't I a Woman project for Culture Night here at South Tipperary Arts Centre. Teresa Guschelbauer, artist and curator of Ain't I a Woman. As a curator, I just want to ask you the kind of genesis of it.
I had this exhibition, Women of the Resistance Activism, earlier in the year here in the Arts Centre, and as part of that I had planned a cabaret, a feminist cabaret, which didn't come about for lack of time. And so while I was researching activism in general, I came across Sojourner Truth, who had done a speech in 1851 at the Women's Convention in Akron, and the speech is known as Ain't I a Woman, and she repeats that question several times throughout her speech. And I was just struck by how fresh and modern and delightfully ironic the speech was, and I was really interested in exploring that more and maybe sharing that exploration with other women. So I pitched the idea to the arts officer here in Tipperary, and she accepted the idea. And so I was able to invite 6 other artists. Well, I invited more, but 6 were able to take up the call to reflect on that. And it's been a really interesting opportunity. Funnily enough, a lot of these women, many of which are similar ages, sort of 30, 40-ish, didn't know each other, didn't know their practice. So even for that alone, it was a very useful exercise before we even have, the exhibition up. And it's not really an exhibition, it's more a series of installation and responses and experiments around the speech and, what it might be saying to us today.
I think it's very interesting in terms of just listening to everybody speak the other night, the different responses, from this one thing, but yet there's a thread that kind of seems to unify them. And while they're all coming from the same general place, the different ways of expressing that is very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose a lot of these women would have come up from similar backgrounds because they're Irish. But also I think because of things changing in Ireland in recent years, there's been quite a lot of public debate, and further afield, in America with the Me Too and so on. So that's, the Western women and their emancipation. But for me personally as well, there's this whole dimension of, the women elsewhere in the world, the voiceless women who are basically still hugely exploited. And I suppose my interest as a textile artist is to explore that. So I'll be bringing in my own braids, which is what I do, and exploring, where does that come from and where does it go? And the whole idea also of cheap fashion and waste is very pertinent at the moment. So, and how that is so entangled with cheap labor and terrible working conditions and terrible environmental footprints. So I think that's usually problematic, and it's interesting that that problematic goes alongside, being a woman and generally women, because, 80% of textile workers in the world are women. So yeah.
Friday will probably be a really good opportunity to explore loads of different aspects of womanhood. It seems like it might be, rather than a finished thing, like a further stepping stone to something else again.
Yeah, I think it's been very refreshing to, just listening to each other, and then this idea of cohabitating in the same space is something that I quite like, that, and it's quite fluid, and I suppose it's quite a feminine thing as well, this fluidity, and then learning from each other and collaborating. Myself and Bridgettian will be doing a piece together, which is sort of a bit of a tongue-in-cheek look at, the Barbie world and the feminist world and how that clashes. So, it could be really interesting to do something else, maybe for International Women's Day next spring.
Or even just, as a group, to sort of make it a solid thing in some way that... I mean, it is interesting that you said that the fact that, everybody's from the local area, but yet many of them didn't know each other at all.
Quite surprising, but I suppose it shows how we're kind of, as practitioners, we tend to be quite isolated.
You do work in isolation a lot.
And also you tend to work in your own field. It's the sort of multidisciplinarity of practice, which is something that I'm really interested in, is not that widely practiced locally here. And maybe that can change by actually coming together more.
Yeah, it's definitely shaping up to be a very interesting day anyway.
Yeah.
And that's it. I hope you all have a chance to experience some of Culture Night. Tonight, get out there and support all your local artists who are providing all this for free. And don't forget, Cashel Arts Fest happens over the weekend. It opened on Thursday and runs until the 22nd. They've got an amazing lineup that you can check out at www.cashelartsfest.com. We wish them all the best for the rest of the weekend and hope the weather stays really, really good for them. That's it for this week. We'll speak to you again next time.